Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethics. I'm Conor Bromley. I'm joined today by Taff. How you doing, Taff? How you feeling on the
Pretty good.
Bronies?
Yeah, need it after that weekend.
Yes, yes, and we will talk about that in our West Ham. Well, kind of a West Ham review, but it's going to be more so about other topics. We're going to talk about Dan Neil right now, though. He's now left Sunderland. He's joined Ipswich Town on loan, and that means that his time at the club is over. What's your initial reaction to this? Are you sad? Are you not bothered? Are you happy? How are you feeling?
I imagine that it. I mean, I think it is whether you liked him as a player or not. I think it is a sad thing for him. His entire football career has been put into Sunderland, and I know that players move on. I get that, but he's given all his entirety of his footballing career to his hometown club, and he gets them promoted to the Premier League. And he must have been full of such joy that day to think he's got a chance. He was an integral part of the team, and he barely plays at all. Um, I think the most number of minutes he got was the last 10 or 15 at Everton, and that's not even the Premier League in the FA Cup. And, Regis said early on, I cannot remember which game it was, I think when Ronaldo got sent off or Siddiqui got injured, I can't remember, that he said he was about to bring Neil on, but that changed what I had to do. But I don't, given what has happened, I don't really believe that because we've had defenders galore playing in his specific. They've been playing out of position, favoured above him in his own position. So I think it's a sad moment for him in that he has left, from his perspective on a low. He would have hoped for so much more, having worked tirelessly to get us back there. And I think that's got to be a disappointing something for him. Um, I like the lad. I think he's been a good servant to the club. Um, but I think it's clear that we are in a different place now. He isn't going to play, although I think he should have had more time than he's had, given other people out of position. So I'm not unhappy, but I don't wish him to go. I think that we've just moved on, and I think it's just a bit sad the way it ended, given how what he's given to the club.
Yeah, I'll just pull you up on the fact that you said he played against Everton. His last game for Sunderland was against Brentford. He played 11 minutes. He didn't play against Everton in the FA Cup. So his
Oh, it's 11
appearances this
minutes.
season, yeah,
Right.
his appearances this season were Aston Villa at home. He got 1 minute. Wolves at home. He got 1 minute. I mean, I think that's like comes on the 89th minute and plays out of time. So
Yeah.
he's probably played in the region of about 20 minutes this
I
season. And
remember. Yeah.
sorry, go on.
I remember he came on when he came on at Brentford. I remember, slightly in mock, there were people around me think, I bet you he doesn't miss a pass. And he didn't in those 11 minutes. He didn't miss a pass at all. And he won every duel, which was, there's a certain irony in the crowd at observing that thing, given that we knew how out of favour he was. But he did all right. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Bad
think
performance, though.
for me, my I suppose disappointment with this is that when we won promotion at the end of the season, I looked at the team and I thought, right, who of this team that's playing right now do I think could play in the Premier League? And Dan Neil was a player that I looked at and thought, yeah, he probably could. I looked at Trey Hume, I thought he probably could. I looked at Ballard, and I thought he possibly could. I looked at Patterson, and I thought he I mean, I did think we had to replace Patterson, but I thought he might have been given a go. But Dan Neil was one of the players who played that day that I really thought had a good chance. We know he's been linked with Premier League moves before, and to me, it's just been really weird that he's been so cut out. I mean, this isn't a guy who's like been on the bench for coming on for 20 minutes, getting the odd start. I mean, he's literally been about as frozen out as you possibly could be for a player that was our captain last season, a player that clearly the manager really rated. He played in pretty much every single game he was available last season. Very rarely took him out of the team. So it's been strange to me that he's been ostracized this much.
Um, yeah, I think it is strange. Although I don't agree. I don't think he was somebody I looked at who thought he's a Premier League player. I didn't. I was dubious about whether he would make the step up, but he works hard, and I would have been prepared to give him a chance over time. Um, so I mean, it has been astonishing the level at which he's been frozen out. And you have to wonder if we hadn't had such a great start to the season, and if all of our signings hadn't been so good, what would the response of the fan base have been to Lebris having frozen him out? It probably wouldn't be this smooth an exit for you know. So they're not lucky. They put a lot of work into it. But yeah, I mean, he is basically going to leave having won at Wembley 3 times, got a double promotion, and he's basically going to leave with minimal sort of fanfare and minimal fuss. And I think people will forget him, you know, rather like people who leave your employment, you get forgotten very quickly. Within 6 months, people have forgotten your first name. However, I think history will reflect very well on him as a great servant to the club. Who, you know, I remember when Methven and whatnot were in charge. You were at the club there. There were lots of accusations of asset stripping. It is an entirely different question. None of those
And
assets are
employing
performed,
idiots
actually.
as well.
Yeah. They didn't give you the job. You tell me you were already there. But there was also accusations of asset stripping, and he didn't demand to leave. I mean, some of those players I know thought, you know, I thought I was at a Premier League academy, and now I'm at a League One academy. I want to go better, and a lot of them were tempted by better. And I don't know if he was, but he didn't leave, and he stuck it out. And I think his journey in football has been all the better for it, and he has reached bigger heights than any of those assets. Which have turned out to be no assets at all, frankly. So he's, you know, he's done well, and he's benefited from it. But I don't really agree that I thought there was a Premier League player there. I mean, is he a better player than Hayden Hackney, who I don't think is a Premier League player?
Maybe.
You
I don't know. I just thought that. Look, I'm not saying. I mean, my expectation when Sunderland got promoted was that we'd be where like Burnley are right now. I didn't think we'd be 11th in the
That's
Premier
true.
League and pushing towards, you know, the top end of the table. So obviously, if I'd known we were going to sign Granit Xhaka and Noah Siddiqui and Habib Diop and all the other wonderful players we've signed, I maybe wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
But just on the day when I looked at it, I thought, right, if we're going to cobble together a team here
Yes.
that has a chance, I thought Dan Neil still would have been in this team, and I think that is the crying shame of it. If I'm then going to flip it to the business side of it, because I think that's also important. I think a lot of people are talking about how good of a servant Dan Neil's been, and he absolutely is. But there's a question as to, you know, where in history he belongs. I mean, is he a legend? I don't really like throwing that term around because I think legend should be used for people like Niall Quinn and maybe Kevin Phillips. In my generation, they're the only two that I think would qualify. But Dan Neil has won 3 games at Wembley. He's played over 200 games or something. But I think there also is a question of this is being bad business from Sunderland, because this is a guy that has come through the academy. He has had suitors from the highest level. We probably could have sold him 18 months ago to a Premier League team. We didn't. We've then let his contract run down and we've lost him for pretty much nothing. Yeah, you've got all the games and everything he's done for us. He helped us get promoted and stuff, so it's not a loss in that sense. But I mean, this is potentially a 10 to 15 million pound asset that we've lost for free, and I think it's fair to say that you can criticise the football club for allowing this to happen.
I mean, I don't think he is a 10 to 15 million pound asset. Who's going to pay that money for him? Rangers,
But no,
Ipswich.
no. But I think you're
Well,
missing the point of what I'm talking about. I'm saying 18 months ago, if you sold Dan Neil, you would have got 10 to 15 million pounds.
yeah, but I mean, we don't really know where the buyers are. You would have to imagine that 8 months later, those buyers are still there. And he's, you know, I mean, you have to see where he goes in the summer. Does he go to any of those rumoured clubs in the summer? Does he go to Liverpool? Does he go to Roma? Probably not.
No.
And I
Was he
mean,
linked with a
who
Spanish
is
club in the
paying?
summer?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I was
Zaragoza,
going to say
maybe?
we're
I
going
can't
far
remember.
back. I don't
Yeah.
think, though, that
I don't
it's
think
still.
anyone's paying 10 to 15 million pounds for Dan Neil last
I
year.
disagree. I disagree. I think if you look at the market, right, and where it is, you've got a player there who's, how old's he now? He's probably only about 24 now. He is, yeah, he's 24 years. He's just literally turned 24 last month. So you've got a 24-year-old midfielder, played 200 games, probably played about 100 in the championship, if not more, maybe 120 in the championship. Captained the team to promotion in the championship. was one of the best players in the championship. Well, one of the best central midfielders in the championship over the 3 years he was in there. I think a player of that age generally, as a rule of thumb, goes, I would say, north of like £8 million. I mean, you look at Hayden. You talk about Hayden Hackney. What were Ipswich trying to pay for him in the summer? They were trying to pay 15 million. I think that's a comparable player. So I definitely think that
Hayden Hackney was inches away from signing from a Spanish team in the summer, wasn't he? I can't
no, he was
remember
going to
who.
Ipswich. He was signing for Ipswich.
Hackney.
Yeah, Hackney was at,
Yeah.
he was going to Ipswich and he turned it down to stay at Middlesbrough, which could be an inspired decision to be fair, looking at where Middlesbrough are right
Yeah.
now. But I just think
I'm going
that,
to support your argument very briefly.
okay, go on.
And let's see where that goes. Because if you look at last season in the Championship, and let's compare him to Jobe Bellingham, who I think everyone would agree would be the better player, and we sold him for, with add-ons, nigh 30 million. And here I am saying I don't think Dan Neil's a 10, 15 million pound player, because I can't think who wants to buy him for that much money, even if he is under contract. So if we look at last season and compare Dan Neil to Jobe Bellingham, Neil plays more games. Neil has the same amount of assists. Neil has 1 goal less than him, and he has fewer key passes, maybe a third fewer key passes, but he's playing deeper than Jobe Bellingham, so he can't make that many. But his statistics are pretty much on a par with Jobe Bellingham. Bellingham's passing is sort of 87%. Neil's is 85%. So obviously his defending will be better than Bellingham's because he's positioned and same as progressing. But his stats across the board for last season are very similar to Jobe Bellingham. So even if you take half of Bellingham's value, there's your 15 million. So
Yeah,
in the team last year, he was a comparable player, and you would have said he was young enough. You would have said he was worth at least half of whatever Jobe Bellingham was worth, even though his stats are pretty close to that. I also think he's had a rough deal from some of the fan base. Under Mowbray, he played in Jobe Bellingham's position, but under Lebris, he was moved back to where Granit Xhaka is now. He was the holding midfielder, and we played very often quite attackingly with a single pivot, a single defensive pivot. So I think he was the problem that people got on his back the season after we first made the playoffs. I don't think people were on his back then, but after that, the season after that, when we finished 16th, he copped a lot of flack, and the season we got promoted, he continued to cop some flack. Because he was in a very exposed position. Once he becomes a single pivot, he's in the most exposed position where if a pass goes wrong, it leads to an attack on goal. And if he mucks something up in a turn or doesn't win a duel or break up an attack, it leads to a shot on goal. If you're Jobe Bellingham further up the field, or if you're a winger and you miss a pass or you miss a duel, there are still people behind you to break things up, and it doesn't happen as often. So it's a really exposed position, being that single pivot, playing 3 times a week. And obviously, it was a new position to him, dropping deeper like that. And obviously, those moments where you are exposed and you make mistakes are more glaring and more frequent. But I don't think they were that frequent. And I think people didn't realise, the fragility of just how exposed he was playing as that single pivot. And I thought he was treated unfairly in that respect. So I think he is a good player. I think he got unnecessary amounts of stick, and I think it was because people didn't understand the difficulty. And it's not easy to compare. If Mundell on the wing loses the ball loads of times or misses passes or misses duels, you don't see the impact. And so Daniel has to be a better player than that. And inevitably it shows. So I think he was unfairly treated in that regard.
yeah. I think this is and just to sort of finish this off, I think it's a good move for him. I think he will play in that Ipswich team. I know that I saw Ipswich fans at the weekend. They got beat. And a lot of their fans were saying that they basically don't have a midfield if that Marcelino Nunes doesn't play, or they sign from Norwich. So he'll go in there. He'll probably be a starting midfielder. He'll get himself potentially another promotion on his, he's on our list, and if he doesn't get the move to Ipswich in the summer, which presumably if they get promoted, Ipswich would want to make that permanent, but he maybe has a chance to move again to a recently relegated team. He goes to a Burnley or a Wolves or whoever else goes down, or he gets to go to Ipswich and try and test himself in the Premier League. I mean, I am unwilling to say that he's not a player of Premier League quality because, quite frankly, I've not seen him play in the Premier League. I don't think you can make that
That's
kind of
fair enough.
You can't make that sort of statement without seeing him play there, and I think that's the disappointing thing for me. I think this would have been far more understandable, even for Dan Neil to understand, if he was given time in the Premier League and it was obvious that he was nowhere near. But then we don't watch them in training. Maybe it's obvious in training that he's not at the level of the other midfielders we've got, so you can't play him. Maybe, but
I think if Ipswich don't get promoted, because you'd have to think that in order to get him, there'd be a sort of clause if he promoted, he gets up. You'd think, even from his own personal perspective. I don't know. But if they don't get promoted, I don't think he gets picked up by a Premier League team. I think he probably goes to Rangers, who are interested in him. Danny Roll knows him and knows he's a good player and is a good judge of that. So I imagine he goes to Rangers, who make more money than he will in the Championship. So I don't think if they don't get promoted, I don't think he gets picked up by a Premier League team. And I think if that happens, I can say I win.
No, I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree. I don't think I can judge him fairly until he gets in the Premier League, and I think he will play in the Premier League one day. So there we go. Anyway,
well, I mean, I hope so. And if he does play in the Premier League and he comes up against him, I will applaud him. I think he's been really, really good servant for the club, and it's a bit of a sad day for him in the way that he leaves. But I do wonder whether he regrets not signing that contract last season, because I think he was holding out in case we didn't get promoted. And then when we did and all the rush of the summer happens, suddenly he's couldn't possibly have imagined he'd be excess to need. And that would be that. He couldn't possibly have imagined having held out. And it is funny how those moments in life turn.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
What's the legacy then to finish this off? So I mean, are we? Where does he sit? If at the top of the legend list is Niall Quinn and Kevin Phillips, and then you've got players underneath who are like, cult heroes. You say so like a cult hero would be maybe like a Nyron Nosworthy. Well, I think he's above that. Is he somewhere?
Is he above Kevin Ball? Is he above Kevin Ball?
No, probably not.
No, I wouldn't have said so either. But look, I think he stayed when other assets had their eyes turned and wanted to leave. He didn't say, I'm better than Sunderland in League One. He stayed and he worked his way, and he was core to getting us back into the Premier League. And even if he doesn't sign that contract and you want to question his loyalty throughout all that process, thinking he's worth more, there's nothing wrong with thinking you're more valuable than the people want to pay you. We all do that in life. We all think we're more valuable than other people want to pay us for. And I don't think it matters that he held out for his contract, because he did get us back there, and he did believe that he was doing the right thing, and he did stick by us. So I don't think he's a legend, but I think he's going to be a core part of the story of Sunderland, because, I mean, what a dream that a local lad led us out to Wembley to help us win promotion back to the Premier League, a lad who could have left when his peer groups did, and he didn't. And I think for that, we should all be very grateful.
Yeah, League One to the Premier League. There aren't many people who are able to do that with the same club. So yeah, Dan Neil definitely will always be able to drink in Sunderland for free, would be my guess. And if I ever see him, I'll give him a handshake and tell him well done for a very good Sunderland career. Okay, thanks everyone for watching. Let us know what you think of Dan Neil and his Sunderland career. And we'll catch you for the sort of West Ham review, but also kind of a talk about transfers and everything else that we produce this week.